I'm Troy Thompson. Over the last 15 years, our family has worked hard to create a place we call the center of the universe. A place where our kids and someday our grandkids can come home to and laugh, have fun, learn how to work, pray, worship God, and be a place to celebrate life with all our friends. After a quarter century in uniform, I put away one set of boots for another, working on our acreage, improving the land, fixing some structures, and building new ones. We say, give back to the community, be useful, keep your hands calloused, and spread the gospel. This is a little place in a little state right in the middle of flyover country, from which cries out a voice in the wilderness to all who might want to listen, learn, and laugh along with us. This is our American dream. Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to Sunnyside. I'm recording this on a Sunday afternoon, and I am lively because a couple of things happened today that I want to share with you. Some of you know that I have been singing in the church choir. My friend Don Johnson moved back to Forest City, almost 2 years ago now, and helped me out and did just an amazing job as the music director for the show we did for the community theater back in Christmas time last year with the best Christmas pageant ever, which was not the musical version, but we did our own thing, and it was phenomenal, which, by the way, that show is becoming a movie again, directed by Dallas Jenkins, the same guy who did The Chosen, or is doing The Chosen, and he is somehow connected to the other director that I had in the show, Nate Forsberg, and so there may be something happening with that as far as when the premiere comes out. We don't know. For sure, and I can't say that would be the case at all, but I know that it's a possibility, and so that'll be interesting to see if it happens here in our little community or not. But regardless if it does or it doesn't really matter. That was a great show. We loved what we did, and Don was a great big part of that. He also came into a opportunity to be the director of music at our Methodist church here in town, and so that's where we go, and that's it's been fun. So when Don said, "Hey, we're gonna do some new things in the choir," I figured, he lent his time to help me out with the show that we did with the community theater. So after the new year, started singing in the choir. And I like singing in the choir. I'm the only dude. I'm the only guy that is in the choir right now. Now, there is another guy that sings, but he hasn't been there for a while. So I don't know if it's a summertime thing or what, but hopefully he comes back because, I'm the only guy. And when you're the only guy, that means you're probably the only bass and maybe the only baritone, not necessarily the only tenor, because we've got some ladies that have very nice tenor voices in the choir, but I sing loud. And so today we sang, it was kind of our contemporary service, and we sang some songs that are, they're Christian contemporary music, and it was a lot of fun. We had a band, a guitar and a bass and a drum set, and Don playing the piano was always awesome. And so the whole thing was just great. We sang 5 songs, and I got to sing really loud in all of them. And on the very last one, I got to really nail it and do my, and I'll just leave it at that. And it was fun. And I think the church was a little surprised. I hadn't really done that before. And my wife and my son Colin, I think he might have been a little bit embarrassed. My wife thought it was great, and it was just really fun to just let it out and sing in that capacity. I like the old traditional hymns a lot. I'm familiar with the old traditional hymns a lot more than with the new stuff. I have a private playlist on Amazon Music that is just I call it Troy's Gospel, and it is continually being added to and curated, so that's what we listen to most of the time. And so it's been fun. Don brings in new music in faith into our lives, and so I get to add to my playlist on Amazon and listen to that most of the time. I just find that if you're singing or listening to gospel music and singing along with those, whether they're the classic old style hymns or the new stuff, you know that we love the band Cain and everything that they do, and so all of that stuff, I think it just is a better way to go through life. I was never a heavy metal guy. Obviously, I grew up in a period when rock and roll was rock and roll, unless you're like from the 50s and 60s, and then you think that was rock and roll. I don't know if rock and roll even existed in the 70s, but the 80s was hair bands, and the early 90s was rock and roll, and then grunge came along and ruined everything, in my opinion. So obviously I know all those songs, but I was never a heavy metal guy because I'm not angry. I'm just not an angry dude. I have a sunny side perspective on just about everything, and even when I'm getting serious, I still have a sense of humor, so I always found the metal to be a little too angry for me, but I like all kinds of music. I love the Rat Pack music and all of that stuff. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin's my favorite. I love Sammy Davis Jr. I just love all those guys from that period. The songs, the crooners, from the 30s and the 40s and some of the 50s. I can respect. I used to work at the radio station for a long time, and even as a teenager, then they'd stick you on the weekends, and they'd have a classic gold weekends, and so I know a lot of the songs from the 50s and 60s, probably more than I should, and into the 70s as well. And now I listen to the classic gold weekend, and it's like songs from when I was in school. I don't feel like it was that long ago, but apparently it has. We've moved on so that my music is becoming classic gold weekend material. So that was really great, and great sermon from Pastor Les, and all around just a very good morning. I've been working the last week putting together like promo videos and things like that for the Waldorf University football team. I'm president of the Gridiron Club. The Gridiron Club is a 501c3 organization dedicated specifically to the Waldorf University football program and raising funds and making their every part of their program better if we possibly can. So we reach out to parents and we reach out to former players to some degree, the members of the community. We've built up this amazing tailgating experience on game days. We work with the game day operations. I do the announcing for the games, and I've been doing that for several years and really enjoy that. Also do that for the high school, but college game day is just, there's nothing like it. And now that Jack is at Waldorf University, it's extra special. So we just get to do stuff like that, and been working on those type of things. Had a problem with the trees in Forest City. There's the emerald ash borer has found its way to our neck of the woods, and it's just killed a lot of the ash trees, which is really sad. In fact, we've got about 60 ash trees here at Sunnyside that they're not terrible yet, but some of them are obviously infected, and once they are, it's just, they're going to all go. And ash makes good lumber, and I have a sawmill, so there'll be lots of work to do next year, I suppose, as I conclude some of these other projects that we've got going on around Sunnyside. Thankful that we've got a nice a nice sawmill, bandsaw sawmill, and so lots of logs stacked up, and apparently more to come. But around the football field at Waldorf University, near and dear to our heart, I went to Waldorf, and Bull Store Field is just a beautiful place. It's a great day on Saturdays, and it's surrounded by, speaking of 60, exactly 60 of these ash trees, and they all have to come out. And so Waldorf University is trying to make that happen, and I just said, hey, the Gridiron Club wants to help with that. We'll be happy to take over that project. And so we're going to start working with some tree farms here in the state of Iowa. We're going to plant some different trees out there. We're going to plant autumn gold ginkgo biloba trees. We have one of those here that's about 100 some years old at Sunnyside, and they're just amazing. They don't always turn bright gold. It depends on when the frost comes, but you get into the fall, they turn bright gold. They're just beautiful. They stand out. They're amazing trees. They're pest and disease resistant. They're very cold hardy. They're not messy with their branches, and the leaves are kind of leathery and fairly heavy. And the unique thing that I've noticed about them is that if you get them after the first frost, they will, and then it heats up the next day or two, they will start to, the leaves will start to kind of almost shake, and then they'll just all drop to the ground at one time. Not like Charlie Brown, where they all drop down, but they drop down, they kind of flitter down, and in the end, in 12 hours, the tree's naked, and all of the golden leaves, or green, if frost comes early, they're all on the ground there, and they don't really blow around that much. We are careful to pick them up because they will kill the grass and they're pretty heavy, and there's a lot of them. So we'll have that in the future. But just a beautiful tree that's going to last for a long time, and not hopefully going to have any issues like the ash trees have had here in town. And it's going to be an amazing project. It's going to be kind of an expensive project, but it'll have the opportunity for alumni and parents, different individuals in the community and around the country to buy a tree, and we'll get it planted. We'll make sure the other ones will get taken out, and we're just going to make sure that we replace those trees, because we live in Forest City, for crying out loud. We've got to have trees around all over the place, and we just think that that's the right thing to do. So that is a project that we're working on with the Gridiron Club, but it's not the one that we did today. Today we did just kind of a team camaraderie experience. We invited we invited the community to attend, and we invited members, obviously all of the students on campus, to come down to the Bowman Fine Arts Center, and we produced a hot dog eating contest, the offense versus the defense, and our son Jack was in that. He'd volunteered. I don't think he understood that they were only going to pick 4, so I think every group in the team had volunteers, but they only took 4 of them, 2 representing the offense and 2 representing the defense, and they did a great job. It was 2 rounds of 5 minutes each, and they had to eat as many hot dogs as they could, and it was officiated by my friend Carl Woldridge, who is actually an official here, pretty well-known official in the high school sports in the state, and also an alumni of Waldorf College. And Carl has been on this show on the Sunny Side of Life with Jason Slater, and they talked all about being officials, referees, umpires, all of that stuff. That was in season 1, and so it was fun to have Carl up there, and I got to spend the morning with Jason because he was in the band, and we were singing all those great tunes in the contemporary service at church. So overall, a really great day. The offense won. So Jack, I think he ate, did he get 6? I think he had 6 hot dogs in 5 minutes, which I feel like I could do better than that, but I'm kind of a professional hot dog eater. When you spend that much time at baseball games, all these years with 4 boys, you learn how to, if that's your lunch, if that's your dinner and you haven't eaten all day, I might buy 2 or 3 hot dogs, and then Heidi will, be sitting out, on the outfield area, watching our kids, and she'll, send me to the concession stand, and I might get 3 hot dogs, and I only come back with 1. So between the walk from the concession stand back to where we're sitting in usually the left field area, I've already consumed 2 of them, so I know I can put them down fast, and I feel like I could do more than that. So it'd be interesting to see. Perhaps we'll do a family hot dog eating contest in the future. But the defense just came up a couple of hot dogs shy at the very end. The offense, Jack won his round against wide receiver, however, by only 1. And so then the next round, the heavyweights came in, the linemen, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, and the O-line guy from Alaska he just set it apart. I mean, they crushed it. So end of the day, the offense won, and I don't know. I think the defense has to do some running, but a very fun experience and lots of laughter too. It was a good time, very good time. So all in all, a very good day. And then on Friday, I had the opportunity as school board president to come in early, about 8:30 in the morning, to address the entire faculty and staff, the bus drivers, all of the departments and everything like that gathered together to kick off the school year. Classes for our students begin Friday of this week, but the new teachers have been working in their buildings and getting oriented, and then they brought in the faculty and staff, and everybody's doing their thing this week, and then they had that as well as the Hall of Fame luncheon, which came later in the day on Friday. So I got the opportunity to talk to the teachers everybody in the school district first thing in the morning on Friday. And I really enjoyed that. It's the first time that I got the opportunity to do it. We're going to talk about education today with the school year starting pretty much everywhere in Iowa and probably across the country, I'm guessing. I know certain states start a little bit at different times, some later than others. But it was my basic message was that in the public schools obviously are incredibly important. Our family on my mother's side came to part of her family came to the United States in 1630 to Boston Harbor. And in 1635, the first public school was started in the United States it wasn't the United States back then. So the first public school in North America was in Boston, and it was the Latin school, and they paid for it with taxes that were taken or collected from the shipping lanes that were right there in the Boston Harbor. So a tax-based public school that accepted children from the public. And it was for the first, almost 10, 15, maybe 20 years, it was in the headmaster's home. And then they built a schoolhouse and on and on and on. And obviously that was replicated throughout the country. But the object of a public school education has always been to teach our youth from very young age how to read and write and cipher. And interestingly, in the first public school, so before the country was even a country, it was set up in a desire to be able to teach young people to do those things: read, write, cipher, think, etc. But so that they could be useful in the service of the church, which is funny because you think about what public school when people think about public schools today, they don't necessarily think about the church. In fact, we're a very secular public school system across the country. And whether it's been from, lawsuits or just, different communities, that's the interpretation of what a public school ought to be. That the government at any level should not be advocating for a particular faith. But the first public school system was set up with that very much in mind. Now, it was also a colony. It was the 1630s, and it was a very Puritan area. So that's part of why that occurred. But the same organizations that also started at the higher level of education were Puritan, and I would say today are very far removed from any faith aspect whatsoever. That would be Harvard University, Princeton, Yale, and on and on and on. Those were all started with faith in mind, with that same mission. You wanted the people that were going to be in front of the congregation in the pulpit to have an education so that they could judiciously study and relate the Word of God to the people. That was an important part of the community. And now today in education, we have, it's not new, we've always had private schools, many of whom, if not most, are faith-based. And whether they're Catholic, parochial, or they happen to be an evangelical faith-based church or a classical education in a private school, or whether it's another time, whether it's not even Christian, if it's a Muslim school or a Jewish school or whatever it happens to be, those private schools have been around for a long, long time. They do not have the benefit as private schools. And of course, there's commercial private schools too that have no affiliation with a church necessarily. Maybe they're an academy. Maybe those are the types of schools that they have on the East Coast or the West Coast or some of the more, the bigger cities where they're more elite or whatever it happens to be. I don't know. But, obviously I grew up in a public school system and I'm proud of my public education. I thought it served me pretty well. But I had the advantage of having a mom and a dad who were married, who had also gotten their education in public school and had gone on to college and had raised us going to church every Sunday and had high expectations. We worked on the farm. We just had a mentality of high expectations and standards. And that family unit is where that all began and where that all started. That is where most education truly gets started anyway. If you are a young parent and you are married and you are employed and you are stable and you are willing to raise each child with a respect for education, reading to them, getting them to read, the joy of, the joy of reading to all four of my sons is something that I miss. And I look forward to someday, as being a grandpa, to be able to read to my grandchildren, because I love that. And they love it. They love holding the book and knowing how to hold a book, and they know how you go from left to right, and they see you, and they hear the words, and they can usually by the page, if you've read it enough, they can even by rote appear to be reading along as well, and you can then start to recognize words. And of course, you teach them colors, and you teach them numbers, and you teach them animals, and maybe animal sounds, and it's just great. And so we loved reading to at some point that did stop, when they could read on their own. They weren't necessarily begging dad or mom to come and read the story. I feel like I was maybe the primary storyteller, the reader. And I loved that. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have been in their bedroom at night before they go to bed, before we said the prayers, to read a book or two, and they would know if you tried to make it shorter because you were tired. They knew if you were trying to, cut out of that book early. There's still a couple of pages here. And I love doing voices, and I love doing all of that. And my wife Heidi did too. And so it was awesome. Well, you have parents. I had parents like that. My aunt, my great aunt, Elaine, which would be my grandpa's sister, who lived out in California, was an educator out there, had written some children's books and different things that she did with the development of curriculum in California, in Los Angeles. And she had watched me as a child crawl. And then she told my mother that he's going to be a good reader because of the way that I crawled. I don't know what that means. I feel like I am a good reader. I retain what I read. I'm not like a speed reader. I'm not slow, but I have good retention, and I enjoy reading. And so I hope that has passed along to my own children, who all are good readers, whether they are reading it silently to themselves like a normal person, or they happen to be expounding. So that's good. If you have that as a family, you're already off to the right start. It's that first few years of education. And we worked, so we had the benefit of a very good daycare program that we obviously paid for and had our kids enrolled in. Every single one of them went through what here in our town is called the Hanson Family Life Center. And they, had a little curriculum going on in there, and they learned to socialize, and they learned to, also do crafts and learn their colors and their numbers and their ABCs. And so when they started school, what a relief, right? When they get out of diapers, that's a big relief. When they get out of daycare, now you're not paying for that, Bill, because they're going to public school. What a relief it is. Well, that sounds like an old commercial. It is a relief. That's a big part of education, whether we like to admit it or not. It's there is a little bit of a daycare quality to it. Not maybe that's not what, if you're going to become a teacher, that's not what you don't how you view your profession that way. But having a place for the kids to go all day while the kids are working is kind of a big part of public education. Even back in 1630, the idea was like everybody's work. Even, moms are probably staying at home. Everybody's got their own livestock for the most part, even in Boston at that time. And then they've got their own garden, they've got their own crops, and they're trying to feed themselves. And it's kind of, a form of just sustainable living back then. So kids are working hard. That's how, by the way, because of the way that we have our seasons in North America, you would have a spring season for planting, and you would have a summer season for tending to those plants and crops, and then you would have a fall season for harvest. I know you know that, but that is how we've set up our school calendars based on that, 400-year-old concept that we have a lot of farm kids who have to be present for planting, to work the fields and crops and all of the work that has to happen with the livestock in the summertime. And then you have to be ready for winter, and you bring in the harvest. Well, clearly that's not what we're doing anymore. The number of people participating in our local county fairs in the state of Iowa has dwindled tremendously. I was in 4-H back in the day. I was never in FFA, but you look at the county fairs across the board, they've just really gone down in attendance and participation, particularly in the livestock elements. And a lot of that has to do with the number of families that are still in farming. There's just very few people that are involved in farming. And if they're involved in livestock, they're probably on a livestock program that's of a scale that I could not even identify with, because when I was growing up, we probably had, at the peak of our hog operation, my dad might have had, 1,500 hogs, farrow to finish. And today you put 5,000 hogs in one building. It's phenomenal. I like the old way. I like the way that the pork tasted. I like the way that they had the A-frames and they were kind of running around and their hair was a little thicker and they were different colors and all of that stuff. That's not also the most efficient way to raise hogs. So clearly putting hogs in confinement is a development in the last 40 years that has obviously taken off and taken over. And the result is that you just don't have as many people producing hogs like we did when I was growing up. And so, same thing with cattle. I think they're trying to turn cattle into a way like they try to do like they did that successfully with chickens initially, and turkeys and poultry of all types. And then they were able to succeed and do that with hogs. And then they put the small producers out of business. And then for the most part, and then I think they're trying to do that now with cattle. And now you see huge cattle, confinement centers. I don't think cattle do well in confinement. Personally, I like to see cattle grazing. I think that's kind of what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to eat as much grass as they can and then fart a lot and then, really bring down the ozone layer, which you got to give them credit. All those cows, they are the ones that are doing all that. And if you're Bill Gates, you want to replace those cows with worms and bugs, and then we can just get rid of all the cattle. And I think that that's a terrible idea. I think that, but there's an opportunity in that, because maybe those powerful people will convince you to eat a burger that's made out of crickets, and you'll just love that cricket burger and you'll like it. You'll eat that cricket burger and you'll just shut up and say that you're saving the world. Meanwhile, here at Sunnyside, we'll probably raise some cattle. And then there's going to be somebody that's going to buy that beef for a lot more than what you're buying your cricket burgers for. So, I don't know. That, to me, the government's going to get in the way when it comes to those things. And there's going to be a lot of people that buy into it, and I hope they enjoy their cricket burgers. But as for me and my house, we're going to stick with our beef, our pork, our real chicken, and whatever else we can come up with that we think is pretty tasty. And there's a lot of great food out there, including goat and lamb, and just wonderful things that God has provided for us to eat. So we'll see. What does that have to do with anything? I got off on a little tangent there. The number of people in the county fairs are dwindling, and so it's an indication of what we all know is true, that there is just almost no one that is using children to raise crops, to plant in the spring. We have amazing machinery. My dad he's retired now, but my brother, you can farm 1,000 acres or more, and that's basically like a one-man operation. Maybe a little help here and there when you're bringing in the harvest, but even that's done with great big tractors and wagons and tractors and trailers and semis and combines. It's completely different than it was 50 years ago, let alone 100 years ago, let alone 400 years ago. So we still have a system, though, where you graduate in May, And then you have your rest of your summer off. Some people graduate at the beginning of June. I realize that. And then they go back to school, in our case, here Friday this week. They got the whole summer off because they need that break. I don't disagree that people need vacations, obviously, and they definitely need, and we all need breaks, including young people. I think recesses are great, and you see that at the earliest stages of their education for obvious reasons. They like to play, and playtime is important. But I mean, we are kind of dealing with an outdated system, aren't we? Where we're saying that it's rooted in the idea that people are on the farm, and they're just not. So maybe there is an argument in the future for year-round school. And I know that scares the heck out of people, some people, but the reality is that getting back to that concept of daycare, and again, I'm not using that term negatively speaking. If our parents are working, which is what we want responsible citizens to do, if they are working, if even just one parent is working, and the other parent is staying home or whatever happens to happen, more than likely it's a two-income home, or the parents are out, trying to earn a living and pay these bills. And their kids have to have a place to go. And I believe that we have professional educators who are better at teaching than parents in general, and not the early part of the development of a child from birth to kindergarten in that area. And they help from different members of the community, whether it's a good daycare with a good curriculum where they're learning things, or maybe it's the church and they have Sunday school and they're learning things there, or whatever their social elements are as very young children. That it still starts right there in the family, in the household, reading to them at night, explaining to them how words work and how to speak correctly, and teaching them numbers and colors and the fun stuff. Like, that's really fun. And not every family, not every parent does that, unfortunately. But all parents need to have a place for their children to go where they can get an education from people who have been trained and are passionate, in most cases, about teaching children at every level. And I'm so thankful for the people in our school district, our educators, the supporting staff, the para educators, the folks that serve the lunches, that drive the buses, that keep the maintenance of the buildings going strong, and all of the grounds and everything. I'm thankful for all of those coaching staff members, many of whom are educators, most of whom are educators as well, and all of those things. So our kids are in school from, say, 8 o'clock in the morning or 8:30 in the morning until 3:30 in the afternoon, give or take a few minutes here or there. They could be, as they get older, at school much earlier than that. Once they get into, junior high, they might have extracurriculars that start in the morning. They might start doing some weightlifting as they get in towards that 7th and 8th grade. And then certainly through high school, if they're in athletics, they're going to have things after school. As you well know, they're going to have extracurricular activities. And so a lot of kids, including my own, have been fairly away from the house from, say, 6 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes until 10 o'clock at night, depending on, what activities they were involved with. And that is a lot of time. That's a lot of time away from home. So we put a tremendous amount of responsibility on those men and women who are in our education system, whether it's public or private. But I can only speak specifically about the public education because that's what I'm familiar with. That's a lot of time to spend with people outside of your home. And so we put great faith and trust in their ability to help them learn these topics, this coursework of all these different subjects that as a community, one way or the other, we've deemed are important to their education. So I have tremendous respect for that. My mom was a teacher. She taught at public and private schools in the junior high level for a long time. And she was never my teacher, though. Not in the classroom anyway, which is probably a good thing. But then my aunt was a teacher and developed, actually before there was a guy named John what's his name? John Baylor. Before there was John Baylor, there was Alice Lynn Hart, and she was teaching kids how to do better on those entrance exams for college, the ACT and the SAT, and she's been doing that. She still does that to some degree down there in Florida. And my grandmothers were teachers, and my in-laws are teachers, and my wife Heidi went to college to be a teacher, but ended up getting a great job and continuing in that role for the last 30 years or so. So there's just this high level of respect. That school that started, the Latin school back in Boston in 1630, that started in 1635 and 1630 is when one of my 11th great-grandfather came over from England and worked in the harbor and may have started the Pequot War. I think we've talked about that in other cases. His children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, etc., went to this school, this same school in this public education system so that they could learn and grow and do the things they need to do. And it wasn't just his kids. It was a lot of the kids in Boston. And some of the famous folks that left there, guys like John Hancock and Sam Adams and another bald dude named, Ben Franklin, all went to that same school. Public education is a commitment by the people of the United States of America now that we are going to allow all of our parents that are to be active and employed members of a community to go out and to do great things, to build their own little legacy, to follow that American dream. And then they can trust that we, the public education system, is going to take their children and provide a safe space for them. And in the time that they're there, we're going to teach them how to read and write and cipher and all of these other amazing things that have come along in the sciences and the social sciences and on and on and on. Now, what the public schools obviously are missing is that original intent of faith. It's a secular public school system. And so there are some parents that they don't appreciate that. They think that the secular system is full of sex, drugs, and rock and roll and nastiness, and so they will then take their kids and they'll put them in the private school, wherever it happens to be. Now, in my experience, there's not much more of an indication that the kids or families that are necessarily sending their kids to public or private faith-based schools are any better Christians than the people that are parents in the public school. Now, maybe everybody or most people in the private school may be affiliated with the church, particularly if it's a Catholic school. Maybe they are, church-going Christians and that type of thing. But maybe they're not. Maybe they just want the benefit of having their kids in a place where they pray. And I can appreciate that. But that doesn't necessarily guarantee that their kids are going to go to heaven. They still have to be saved. And the good news is for public school kids, they can be saved and they don't have to go to a private school to do it. And I think that in many ways, which is my story as a public school kid, you can be a faithful Christian and be in a public school. And I would think that you have a great experience with that because, we are in this world, but not to be of it. And so it's ridiculous to cloister our little children away so that they're never exposed to all the evil sinners of the world. Because to me, that betrays a little bit of our own absence of faith in our ability to teach the value of God in our lives to our children, starting from that very early age of praying with them at night, letting them know that there is a Father in heaven who oversees all things and makes everything work, including everything in their own little bodies. And, there are a lot of people that aren't doing that in the public or the private school as parents. And I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. It's just the truth. And so there is obviously a huge benefit to a family that does those things. And there's a huge, it's to the detriment of the child when parents don't do those things. The thing with the public school is that we're obliged to take everybody. We take everybody. So there's a good chance that the kids that are going to private school, whether their parents are still together or not, or they've got great jobs and they can afford to spend them extra money on tuition, or maybe they don't have that great of a job. They're just dedicated to paying, making that extra step in their life. The thing that they've got going for them in most cases is that they have strong family structure. That is huge. So they've got the advantage of that. Private schools have only, in my opinion, two immediately obvious benefits, and that is faith curriculum, which we don't do in the public school, and they have family support almost across the board. And public schools would love to have family support all the time that the private schools have, but they don't. It's nothing to say that the public school kids don't have great families, because a majority of them do. But it's the minority of public school families that kind of suck, to be honest with you, that really make it a challenge in the public school. And we expect our faculty and our staff to become parents, to fill in the role of parents for crappy parents in the public school, and to some degree in the private school, but not as much, clearly. So in the public school, we have a little bit of a disadvantage in that regard, is that we have to, we take everybody, which we should, that's our role, and we love every kid, that's good, and we want to bring all of them up to the standards to graduate from high school. That's our job. Right, but at the same time, our faculty and our staff, our support staff, our administrators, I don't want to say burdened, but a tremendous amount of their time is spent dealing with the kids that have the hardest time at home, the ones that are missing that faith curriculum that starts at home. You don't need a faith curriculum at a Catholic school or at an evangelical private school or a Muslim school or whatever, or Jewish school. You don't need a faith curriculum in a family maybe as much. You probably already have it if you've made the effort to send your child there. In the public school, we don't have a faith curriculum. We're not allowed to, because people, the Satanists will get mad or whatever. But the same token, their parents don't have that faith curriculum. So that affects everything. That affects their morality, the standards in many, many, many ways. However, I would argue that public schools have, without the faith curriculum, they are still able to be mirroring the best qualities of a faith curriculum. And I think, see, in Iowa, we've got, the last couple of years have been fairly challenging in public education, particularly from advocates on the conservative side in the state legislature. They have kind of made it seem like they're attacking school teachers, and maybe they are. And school teachers aren't above criticism, so, get over it. At the same token, it has to be justified. And so I think that part of my job is to be able to parse out, what is fact and what is fiction and what is emotion and what is, truth. And so the truth is, in my opinion, that I feel like the truth is that we have a little bit of a disadvantage because we can't have a faith curriculum, but we should be able to take the absolute best things of the private schools, and we should be able to undoubtedly dominate in the public school competitively. I'm not concerned with private school education, to be honest with you. Now, there are some conservatives in state houses and whatnot that say that the private schools have all of these benefits, and they do. And I don't disagree, to be honest with you. Like, as a taxpayer, pay a lot of taxes. And if my kids are in school, I feel like I should be able to take them wherever I want to. And I should be able to take some of that tax money with me because it's mine. It's not yours. It's mine. Now, my kids are all in public school. We support the public school system, and I'm on the board of education, but I'm not afraid of the private school education and taking state supplemental aid for students. They're going to continue to raise their tuition regardless of state supplemental aid. That's still going to happen. They're going to have to, find their own infrastructure as they grow, and they'll have to do that. And public schools have an advantage too when it comes financially. We can't charge tuition, but we can charge taxes, and we do that a lot. And a responsible school board is cautious about their budget. And there are a lot of rules in the from the legislature through the Department of Education, at least in the state of Iowa, and I'm sure it's across the board nationwide. The legislature really wants to have their fingers deep into the public education system, and they kind of want to control a lot. They want to be able to tell you, what they can do in their curriculums and all of that stuff. And yet they don't say anything to the private schools. Yet they give the private schools the same state supplemental aid. That's clearly stupid. Not that they give the money to the private schools for state supplemental aid. As a taxpayer, I don't have an issue with that. And as a school board member, I truly don't have an issue with it because I can beat the private schools. I can beat the private schools in the sense that that's just competition. I can look at what they do. I'm not, burdened by a diocese or a church board somewhere. We have our own school board. We can move quickly to make things happen if we choose to be that way. We can take what is best from a public school, whatever it is that they might be doing better, and we can adopt that into our own thing. And whether they adopt our best practices into the private school curriculum is really their problem, not mine. It's a competition, and I think we can win. We have the advantage of being able to tax, so we have levies that we can do, so we can continue to build our buildings and keep our facilities up, and all of that stuff. State supplemental aid does help pay for our teachers. That goes into the general fund, and obviously, if you don't have as many kids coming to your school, then you're going to lose some of that state supplemental aid, and you might have to reduce teachers at a certain point. But that's business. We can't protect it just because we're not willing to compete. Because at the end of the day, I think we absolutely can compete. And we in Iowa, we have a tremendous advantage because we're a small population state. We have a lot of small towns, and truly the ones that cause the biggest problems with the legislatures, particularly the conservatives in the legislature, those are the school districts that come from very large populated areas. So they may be, on the opposite side of the people that are controlling the House and the Senate and the governor in the state of Iowa. But, one of the things that our teachers in the public school system have, at least in Iowa, it may not be the case if you're in New York City, for example, where they can charge exorbitant rates for private schools. But here, our school teachers make more money than the private school teachers. I can guarantee that. My mom taught in both. And it's kind of appalling what they make in private school as educators. They're not killing it financially, and their benefits aren't as good. They don't qualify for IPERS, right? The Iowa Public Employee Retirement System. They don't get any of that. And IPERS is tremendous. In fact, if you stick around with teaching long enough in IPERS, maybe with just a little part-time job, you kind of for the rest of your life make about the same money that you did when you left. And you don't have that health insurance issue. So there's pretty big benefits, at least in Iowa, for the public school teachers financially. And also, in most, I don't know if you ever take a look at that, but Iowa's median income is $70,571. The United States median income is $75,149. And here in Winnebago County, so we're a little lower than the state and certainly the United States average, we're at $62,853. That's the median income. Of course, what that means is that half the people in the survey group in our county or state or nation or whatever is making more than that amount, and half is making less. So that's the right down the middle. Teachers starting off, if you're a single teacher, first year out of college now, you make $50,000. And that's household income, by the way. $62,853 is household income in the county that I live in here in Iowa. $75,149 is the United States median income. So if you have two people working in your house, that combined is the median. So half of the homes in the United States are making less than $75,000. Half of the homes are making more than $75,000. If you have two teachers working in a public school system that just started and they're married, they're making $100,000, which puts them ahead of the median income of the highest median income in the county in the state of Iowa, which is $99,000. So the argument of teachers are underpaid is probably not accurate, at least not in small town America. I mean, maybe it is in a big city or something like that where expenses are ridiculous anyway, so you shouldn't live there. But here in the great state of Iowa, in our small towns, our small communities with less than 5,000 people, with a dozen churches and a university in our case, and all this other wonderful things that are going on, they got nice houses, they got nice cars, they got great insurance, and they, in most cases, unless they're a baseball or softball coach, they have their summers off. And I know that that's a bone of contention for my friends in education, but it's true, and that's a part of, the benefit of doing the job, because we're still following this 400-year-old agricultural plan of when school should be in session. And that could change, because it doesn't. So we have to be cautious. Like when I talk to my friends in education and I advocate for them with the legislature and the different elements in government, whether locally or state or national, as a school board president, I'm like, well, easy on the argument here, because I'm not sure you would win that with Joe Schmuckatelli, who's standing on the corner. He's got 3 kids in our school system, and he and his wife together are below the median income, and you are well above that median income. So that doesn't wash as well. Matt Damon talking about how teachers are underpaid. It just doesn't work, at least not around here, because you have people that are working very hard year round, 320 days a year, and they're making less than the median income, less than what you make. And so that you got to be cautious, because that argument doesn't go very far. And the benefits don't go very far. I was a government worker too, 26 years, United States military, right? And retired out and have a pension for the rest of my life. So yay. But I also recognize that despite the fact that, it was military, I guess there was, the possibility of, being blown up or whatever. Although for me, I was a recruiter, so chances of that happening pretty limited. But for most people in the military, I mean, there is that reality that, they can get killed. And I think that's the same thing for public employees that are police officers and public safety of all sorts. And even our EMTs and paramedics and that type of thing are constantly running into, they're dangerous jobs, or our prison guards and that type of thing. There's dangerous jobs. There's dangerous elements of working for the government. But most people who work in the government are not required to take a fitness test, obviously, and they are pretty safe and comfortable. And they have, in the military, you get 30 days paid vacation. They're not going to fire you. You're on a contract. And all you have to do, at least in the military, you have to meet the standards. You have to pass the fitness test. You have to pass the rifle qualification. You have to do a variety of other things annually and all these other things. And they have requirements for teachers, and they have requirements for other government jobs as well. But for the most part, the advantage of being a government worker is real simple. I'm probably not going to get fired. I'm going to have a retirement, and I know what my schedule is. I also am not required to produce anything that is going to result in a turnaround of profit, which is going to allow me and my peers to make more money, like in a normal business. Government doesn't have that. The risk associated with the private sector is removed from the public sector. That's just an economic reality. So and I loved it. I loved being in the military. I loved the job that I did for 15 years in recruiting. I mean, it was, in my opinion, it was kind of a cakewalk, and I knew it, and I knew I was going to retire. I knew I was going to retire on August 31st, 2021, and I called that in like 2013. I wasn't counting down the days. I just knew when I was done. And I looked forward to the plans after that. And we made our economic plans based on my retirement date, where we wanted to be and what we wanted to have accomplished, so that when, I kicked off from the military, we were not hooked up to anything. And so I think a lot of people, share that understanding of the benefits that you get when you're a public employee, which is what teachers and administrators are. But that doesn't discount the fact that they are still unfairly expected to parent children from crappy parenting. That's a problem, because our society has a problem with that. And we can't legislate people back into church. We can't legislate good quality parenting practices. We can't legislate parents read their children bedtime stories or pray with them before they go to the bed. We can't do that. All right? And so the families that do, their kids have an advantage. And a lot of the families that send their kids to the private schools do that. So those private schools have an overwhelming advantage in the regard that they have familial support, that the public schools, not that they don't have it. We love our public schools, and we have a majority of great families. However, there's a lot of families, I would say the minority of families, that eat up everybody else's time in the classroom, the expenses in our administration, and the hiring of counselors and additional resources from outside vendors in order to take care of the needs of children. It's not their fault, from families that don't have it together. And if you're a private school, you just don't have to take them. That's not an argument for us not to take them. Public school wants that. It's our responsibility. Take pride in that because we're part of a community. But when you have educators that want to teach a particular subject and they're spending a lot of their time parenting because the parents are crap, that can be a problem. And I just wanted the people that are in our community school district to understand that I appreciate them. And my family's been involved with this education, this public education thing for about 400 years. And it's just so very, very valuable and important what they do when they show up and the things that they do to inspire our kids. Because you could show up and you could be a dude working in a factory and you could be really good at what you do in the factory. You could be an independent business person, a contractor, maybe one of the best pipe fitters or electricians that is out there. But that doesn't mean that you're a good teacher. It doesn't mean that you can explain how you do what you do well to teach the next generation to be good at it. You might really not be good at that at all. And there's a group of people who have dedicated their lives to getting better at that every day and inspiring people, young people particularly, to be lifelong learners. That's amazing. Our superintendent has a good saying, and I happen to agree with it, that the educators, and this is true whether it's public or private, but educators in general, God bless them, look, they make their profession makes every other profession possible. And I think that's absolutely true. And I'm thankful for it. We have a place for our kids to go. And while they're there, they need to be able to be taught and to take in and hopefully put back out as much information and value as they possibly can. It's a true investment in our society. Public schools can mirror biblical principles. They can absolutely mirror biblical morality and standards while remaining secular. There are some, in my opinion, lunatics that have wildly what I would consider satanic values. Whether they would ascribe that to Satan or not is probably debatable, and certainly we face that every day in our secular world, in our secular society. But part of it as parents is we have to teach our children to recognize that and to be able to stand it without accepting it. You can tolerate things without accepting values that are clearly against God's wills. But the best thing that you can do as a public school system is mirror the values, in my opinion, of biblical morality in a secular way. That may sound impossible, but when you think about what most secular people think makes them good people, it's all biblical values anyway. So it's not as hard as we possibly make it seem. I think that there are some schools, and this is going to be my final point, because budgets matter, and getting people to be teachers is becoming more challenging. People think they don't make much money, and that is not true, as we've already talked about. I mean, they may not be millionaires. If you want to be a millionaire, you got to go take the risk for that. You got to go accept the risk. You got to invent something, create something, take the risk, lose everything potentially. And that's just not the barter that we make when we're public employees. We don't. We traded that off a long time ago. And so that doesn't mean that you can't also have a side hustle in the summer if you want to. If you're just sitting around, in your pajamas all summer, not volunteering for anything in the community, not running your, a little side. But I know teachers that do a great roofing business, and they've got teachers that are doing other, these are hustlers. They're out there, they're making money. They don't necessarily need it, but they're doing it because they maybe enjoy it and they like the extra money. Maybe that's a vacation or two that they get. I don't know. That's what I'd be doing, because I always have to be doing something. And of course, the Army couldn't have a side hustle very easily at all. So you have to get that approved. Good Lord. Plus, we were working, the whole year round. So they could be doing that. But if you're not, it's your summer. You can do whatever you want with it. But don't complain if you're not making money when you're like, well, there's 90 days here where you could be doing a little something extra if you really wanted to do that. Or choose a different profession. But I wouldn't want people to just exit the public education system because it's hard enough to find educators as it is. Part of the reason that is happening, like I said, is because they think they don't make enough money. We've already covered that, and I don't think that is as true as we would want it to be. I wouldn't try to win that argument in a debate team. However, I think that some of the things that we're doing to try to cajole our public educators into staying in the districts in which they are in is stupid. And one of those things that is happening is a 4-day week. So we've already established, in my opinion, that we have a purpose, at least Monday through Friday, when most people are working, to have a safe place for our children to go. And while they are there, that they will be educated. The role of the public education system. That's Monday through Friday in most cases. I realize people have weekend jobs and so on and so forth, but Monday through Friday is the standard because it matches the work week. If our kids, particularly our very young kids, do not have a place to go on that Friday, they have to, and it's not school, then they're going to have to go find, the parents are going to have to take money out of their budget, and they're going to have to find either daycare. They're going to have to find a relative, hopefully a retired relative who's got the time, but that's going to cost somebody food or whatever it happens to be. And so these school districts that are taking a day off in order to give their employees a 4-day work week as an incentive to stay, these are also districts in my mind that are, that's the death knell of that district, in my opinion. It is an unfair tax on the constituents of that district, usually young parents, maybe not as well established in their income bracket because of whatever job they may have, who now have to expend more money on either daycare or transportation or whatever it happens to be, and they're doing and at the expense. And it's a tax on people with young children, and I would say that goes all the way through junior high, and it puts our children at risk of not being in school one more day away from, in some cases, a meal program that they don't have over the weekend, believe it or not. I think it's just to me, when I look at and they're usually smaller districts that are struggling to keep faculty, whether they're in good financial position or not is really irrelevant, because what they're exposing is that they don't have a district that is able to do their job entirely. And so they're saying, well, we'll just do it this many days. And it works. It works for small districts to keep people there because the teachers are only working 4 days. But I will tell you, that's not going to last. That district will not be there for long. And if it were up to me, I would be circling those districts as an opposing district with the 5-day plan and better facilities like a shark. Because those kids could be coming to our school for 5 days instead of just 4. They could be coming to our district and experiencing a lot more activities and programs that we have available that perhaps run a little bit earlier and go a little bit later so that parents can continue to do their job and we can benefit from the numbers. So I'd say that if you are in a district where your school board has decided the only way that they can keep their team together is by giving them a day off every week throughout the school year, your district is in dire straits. Now, they would argue against that. They would say that it's 100% great. The faculty and staff love it. Who doesn't love a 3-day weekend? maybe the people that are paying the price that are in the district that are serving as, the actual customers, the parents and the children themselves. So I don't buy it. And I'm watching as a school board president very closely the smaller districts around us that I consider or maybe are even doing that. Because to me, that's a shot over the bow that you are failing. And we have to be careful as a public school system across the country. We have to be careful. We have to be aware of our left and our right limits, aware of what the arguments are, aware of who our audience is when we're asking for certain things and demanding certain things. Because, again, we can differentiate between emotion and truth. We can differentiate between a good argument, possibility, and a bad idea. We can do that. And I feel like that's something that every well-educated person, hopefully coming from the public school system, is able to do as a citizen. And I think that we also have to be very much aware of the people that we are serving and taking care of them. And I think that in our district, we're very strong financially. It's a destination district in many ways where people want to be. And we have a very nice community, and we need to protect that. That is worth protecting. We don't have a private school in town. We have private schools nearby, I suppose, within 30 minutes or so. And some people have gone to those places, and they'll go and they'll come back. Some of them will, some of them won't. That's fine. Then those private schools that were like 12 people a couple of years ago, and now maybe they have 100 people, they're going to have to buy their own buses, and they're going to have to buy their own, get their own sports facilities and fields and all of the stuff that public schools have been doing for a long time a lot better. And they're going to have to figure out what that costs, and then those tuition rates are going to go right back up on top of the state supplemental aid because they don't have an ability to tax or levy or any of that stuff. We can win this competition. I'm not worried about it. But one of the ways we can do that is by borrowing the absolute best practices from a faith private school and while remaining secular. And then our communities should be investing in our time in church, and they should be, families should be invited to go, and single parent families should be nurtured by members of the community who are faith-based people. And we can go to a public school, we can have great Christian kids, and we can have a secular school system, and it can be just fine. But that means that you have to do your job too. And if you're listening to this and you don't go to church, you're part of the problem, probably, and so get in church, buddy. Church doesn't solve everything. It's the individual human being's heart, which is prone to sin. And so you'll have to reflect upon those things. But I think that that's a good start. And it definitely teaches your children in the same way. Reading to them at night, teaching them how to pray was so important to them as little children. So, friends and family, I look forward to seeing more of you in church, in the choir, particularly if you're a man, because I'm the only one. I think that there's a lot of things that we can do across our great nation, but it all starts in that original governmental unit, which is right there in the home, mom and dad, children, and the obligations and the sacrifices that it takes at the family level, and then to be able to send those children to be responsible to the public school, I guess, or the private school, and that they're there to learn, and that they should be respectful, and that they should be absorbing as much as they can. And the easier they make it for their teachers, then the more their teachers have time to give them additional information, and everything works a lot better. And so that sounds, I suppose, like a little, I don't know, it may be simple, but in my opinion, I think we can make that happen. I think we can all take a look at each other and help each other out, maybe hold each other a little bit more accountable. And you know what? This has also been a theme of the sunny side of life for a long time. If you're listening to this and you live in a great big city, or you live in a large city and the community isn't the kind of community that you're hearing me talk about in my little dream world here at the sunny side of life, a small town with less than 5,000 people. We're blessed to have a university, and we're also blessed to have a great school district. Then maybe you should move. Maybe you should leave. Maybe you are outnumbered. Maybe you should find a little acreage somewhere out there and out here in the hinterland, wherever it happens to be. We'll be happy to have you, and we'd be happy to love your children and to raise them in our community. Until then, we'll see what happens next week. I hope you have the opportunity to be the sunny side of someone else's life. I want to thank all our friends and guests for stopping by for this episode of the Sunny Side of Life. All the Sunny Side of Life players who stopped by, creative support provided every day by my incredible wife Heidi and our fantastic 4 boys. Thanks to every one of our listeners. That means you. A big shout out to my brothers and sisters in uniform holding the line around the world. Share the word, folks. Let the people know what we're up to. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, and follow us on social media. All skits are written or adapted and directed by me, Troy Thompson, and are produced here at Sunnyside Farm Studios and delivered to all platforms by Buzzsprout. Music and sound effects are provided by Soundstripe. The Sunny Side of Life is a weekly production about our life on the family farmstead here in Iowa, the liberties we prize, and the pursuits which make us happy. Now, none of this is possible without Christ in our lives. For the Lord God is our sun and our shield. He gives us grace and glory. So may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may the sunny side of your life, liberty and pursuits, be in Christ, and made evident unto you each and every day, and give you peace.